Before a packed hearing room of stern lawmakers, onlookers, and a lot of reporters, Attorney General Eric Holder seemed ready to answer every question thrown at him.
There's been a lot of criticism raised about the scope of this investigation, including why the department needed to subpoena records for 20 people over a lengthy 2-month period. Why was such a broad scope approved?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of criticism. In fact, the head of the RNC called for my resignation, in spite of the fact that I was not the person who was involved in that decision. But be that as it may.
The next hot topic given a non-answer, the IRS allegedly targeting conservative groups. Holder was asked who knew what and when, but didn't answer with much substance on that either.
There doesn't seem to be any acceptance of responsibility.
To the extent that there are enforcement gaps that we find, we will let this committee know and hopefully work with this committee to make sure that what happened and was outrageous, as I've said, and if we have to bring criminal actions, so that that kind of action, that kind of activity does not happen again.
As the hearing wore on, committee members grew increasingly agitated by Holder's lack of specifics on practically everything, including the seizing of Associated Press phone records, a decision which has the Washington media outraged. Even though it happened under his watch, Holder says he had nothing to do with it and knows nothing.
The decision to issue this subpoena was made by the people who are presently involved in the case. The matter is being supervised by the Deputy Attorney General. I am not familiar with the reasons why the subpoena was constructed in the way that it was, because I'm simply not a part of the case.
And as we all heard this week, President Obama has dismissed calls for an independent probe into the fallout from the IRS scandal and insists an independent counsel is not necessary and that Congress can handle it. Now, joining us now is Dee Dee Benkie, foreign policy expert Scott Monje, and media analyst Jackie Guzda. Let's start off with the first question. Should there be an independent counsel? And since you're sitting right next to me, we'll start off with you. You're in the hot seat now. Should there be an independent counsel?
Well, there's going to be an investigation. I don't know that it has to be an independent counsel. The Congress is going to continue investigating it, and the Justice Department is going to investigate it.
Is that enough, though? I mean, that's the question I think everybody has right now. Jackie, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to take a completely, totally different view on this. I think that they need to target more groups, not necessarily conservative, but progressive, and anything else that sounds like it's a political group, not one for social welfare.
We'll turn it over to you, Dee Dee. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. We need to have an independent counsel. I mean, this is outrageous, and it is interesting because very quickly the Obama administration is saying, well, we didn't know about it, but it's absolutely wrong. They're nervous. They should be. It's incredibly disturbing. The IRS is anyway, for them to act like this in a nonpartisan way and be targeting conservative groups. And yes, of course, we need to have an independent counsel. And just like John Boehner said, someone's going to jail.
Well, let me ask you a question. We'll continue that. What has the IRS apologized for, if anything?
Well, Obama, basically President Obama has already said, look, this is wrong. So it's not alleged. I mean, they have actually said, yes, this is wrong. Absolutely should not have happened. We're looking into it. We're going to do something about it. So they've admitted that they've done wrong. So, you know, coming from the President of the United States. So, yeah, and the IRS, of course, did as well. The director of that organization said this is not right. We're going to look into it and we need to fix it. So everyone admits it, it's wrong.
And as you said, somebody's going to jail.
Or John Boehner feels like someone should go to jail, but someone certainly needs to resign or be fired or something. There has to be, you know, some sort of punishment here.
People have already resigned. As far as people going to jail, I mean, usually you have to establish that there was a crime first and then have an investigation of who did it and then have a trial. Then you decide if somebody's going to jail. Everybody likes to assert the outcome at the beginning. Especially if it's involved in politics. I think the roots of this are in a couple of things. One is that they've taken this non-political body, the IRS, and gave it the job of determining who's political. And that's because Congress decided to do this through the tax code. And they're not necessarily built for that. And then you have a Supreme Court case in 2010, the Citizens United, in which the Supreme Court basically overturned about 103 years worth of precedents and laws to say that any corporate entity could contribute money to political campaigns and things like that.
Okay.
So that took the rules that this determinations unit in Cincinnati was supposed to apply and just kind of threw them out the window. Karl Rove then just thought that if any corporate entity can do it, then 501c4 social welfare groups can do it too. And he set up this Crossroads GPS, which under the new interpretation of the Supreme Court could do this. And the interesting thing about these groups is that they don't have to disclose who their donors are under pre-existing laws for 501c4s. So after that, you get a slew of applications, like I think tens of thousands of applications to the IRS for this category which already existed, but it was for social welfare groups, from these groups, some of whom wanted to be political entities. And the IRS is given no rules about how to deal with this sudden influx, with the old rules tossed out the window. And so apparently people on the scene made stuff up.
Well, Scott, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yes,
I know you want to
yes.
jump in here, Jackie, but I wanted to just talk about, you mentioned Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
How many other offices were affected by this?
That's another thing. People have jumped to the conclusion that this is a regional office. It's not a regional office. This is
national,
the
but it's
national
located there.
office for the determinations unit just happens to be in Cincinnati, and they do the whole country. Now that was supposed to be.
And I thank you for clearing that up. Now, Jackie, I know you're trying to jump in here. You want to respond to?
Sure, is that Citizens United changed everything. However, let's look at the definition of a 501c. Definition is that these 501cs are operated exclusively, and that's the key word, for the promotion of social welfare. So my question is, how is the IRS, as you said, they had no rules, how are they supposed to determine what is for social welfare, what is a political group? They were left to their own devices. And by saying that something that had the title of Tea Party, which is a political group, it's not a social welfare group, or even the progressive groups could pass through. That you can't say that. I think the real problem here is that not one of those organizations that are political, in its sense, were denied 501c status. That's the real problem.
Actually, one progressive group was.
One progressive group
that's
was.
My question is, what prompted this? And to your point, Dee Dee, someone might go to jail, but who gave the orders?
Oh, to do this? Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, what they lied about it to begin with, they said, well, no one on the upper level knew about it. This was just lower level staffers. They had no idea. That's not true. We found out later that it's not true. Of course they knew about it. So there's already a cover-up. There are already problems.
I'm not quite sure who found that cover-up. Who's the person? Who's in charge?
Look, President Obama has already apologized for this.
He has apologized.
I
think he's wrong.
Well,
I think he's
he's
wrong.
right, because he knows
he
knows how important this is. This is a big deal, Jackie. Republicans and Democrats and Independents, everybody should be outraged about this. The IRS should not be abusing the power.
Let Dee Dee finish for 1 minute.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's an abuse of power. It's a huge abuse of power. And to what you said before, that it can be social welfare, but it can also be political activities as well, as long as it's mostly social welfare, which is murky. However, that's a different topic. That does not change the fact that they targeted political groups, conservative political groups. I mean, they just did. And President Obama's already apologized for it because he knows he's in trouble for it. And that's why John Boehner is up in arms and the Republicans are, because they're the ones who got targeted.
They're up in arms because they're using this for their political reasons.
No, the IRS used it for political reasons. The administration used it for political reasons. Exactly. You just made my point.
No, I did not make your point. Look, let's use your example, Emerge Maine. Emerge Maine was the only 501c application that was denied. And their purpose was to take Democratic women and prepare them for Democratic roles in government. Now, out of all of those 501cs that were looked at, 1/3 of those were conservative. We don't know about the other 2/3. We simply don't know. And in that, we need to know.
Yeah, but that's
there's certainly room for more investigation.
That's in the report, though, that they were told to target. That's the problem. They were told to target.
That's what has to be found out through an investigation, at what level this was decided.
Right, and that's why we need an independent investigator.
And Scott, I agree with you. We have to find out exactly who gave these orders. I mean, where did this all come from? Well, let's talk about the hearings and who's going to be involved. And I'll start with you, Scott.
The congressional hearings about the IRS? I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, talk me through if any kind of a process that we could see coming in the coming weeks.
I'm not sure that it's worked out yet, even among the Congress. I saw they had Holder in your lead into this clip, and I was kind of surprised by that because he has absolutely nothing to do with this. This is under the Treasury Department. They just happen to have him there and seem to like to attack him on things. He would be responsible for investigating it as the head of the Justice Department, but that's a separate investigation from the Congress.
Well, we've never really
we've
seen
already
anything
had
quite
the-
like this.
We've
Yeah,
already
it's
had.
different.
Why,
than the
I mean,
involved.
there's a big question mark there. That's why I posed that question.
And another thing about this being covered up, the Treasury Department started investigating this a year ago. So this has already been under investigation for a year, and that's why it came out, because the Treasury Department's internal audit about this was about to be released. So that's why we know about it now. That's not covering it up. That's investigating it and getting.
Oh, well, it's covering it up whenever you find out that there were people that were not lower level staffers who knew about it. That's already a fact. So that is a cover up.
Well, of course there were higher level people. There were people
No,
who
but they
ordered
said
an
there wasn't.
investigation of it.
At the beginning, they were trying to get away with saying lower level staffers. Oh, we didn't know anything. Nobody knows anything, really.
All right, I'm going to give you all this a chance to respond to this question. Is this a form of profiling? I'll start with you, Dee Dee.
Actually, yes, I think you're right. I think it's an interesting way to put it. But yeah, I think it's political profiling for sure. Targeting, this is like, this is worse than Watergate. People are trying to compare this to Watergate. That was certainly a cover up, but that isn't even close to the level of this. And there was a president impeached. So, we'll see. I know you all want to shake your head, but the more that comes out, I think you're going to see is very serious. The IRS is supposed to be nonpartisan. And everyone's always frightened about the IRS anyway, and it's too much power as it is. Now they're targeting people? Not good.
Okay, Jackie.
I just want to jump in on that because
wait,
in
okay.
Watergate, it was through the Watergate investigations that they discovered that Richard Nixon regularly ordered the IRS to audit people he didn't like.
Well, you don't
And
know
it was
yet,
a
do you?
consequence of that.
We don't know that yet. Maybe they have. We don't know yet.
We
Maybe
know
they have,
that
maybe
about
they
Richard
haven't.
Nixon, and as a consequence of that, new orders were put in, and new rules were established to separate the president from the IRS. So the president can't even talk to people in the IRS. If he wants somebody in the
That's
IRS
the
fired,
question.
well,
Did the
then it can be
administration have something to
investigated.
do with telling the IRS to do this? That's the question.
All right, let me have Jackie jump in on this. Profiling,
And there's
yes
no
or
evidence
no?
of it so far.
Not yet.
I want you to look at the history of what's happened in the IRS. Back in 2004, IRS threatened to revoke the 501c status from a church that was anti-Bush. 2004, NAACP, they threatened to revoke their status because they criticized Bush. 2006, there were Ohio churches and Minnesota churches that were advocating for their constituents to vote for certain Republicans. And they were threatened, if you want to use that term, of taking their 501c status away. There's a history, if you want to call this kind of thing a profiling. What I also want us to look at is that it's not just the conservatives. Karl Rove's, his Crossroads GPS, produced all those nasty political campaigns against Obama. They're a 501c. Likewise, during the campaign, Priorities USA, that produced all those horrible commercials that were anti-Romney, they're a 501c. My point is that they do not deserve 501c status.
But that's a different topic.
No,
It is a different topic, but I would like to endorse that.
Yeah, and
that
I'm
this
not
is
even
an
necessarily
opportunity
against
for
that.
changing the rules and
I don't
establishing
disagree with
some
that
rules.
necessarily, but that's a separate topic. I mean, with them profiling, and I really actually like that word. I think it's accurate that they profiled conservative groups, the IRS.
but
It's a
I'm
huge
showing you
topic.
that progressive groups were profiled in the past too.
Not really. I mean, there's no
We'll take a
comparison.
look as obviously we've got to let all the facts unfold and see what happens in the coming days and weeks to come.
And I also would just like to mention, too, that the head of the IRS was a Republican and a Bush appointee.
Doesn't matter. You know what? Don't think you're going to get me on that as a Bush person because I don't condone him doing it. No one should do it. A Bush person, an Obama appointment.
not
No
saying you should.
American should ever do that and abuse power in the administration.
So
All right,
what's
one last
his
question.
motivation?
We're going to take one last question for all of you. We're going to have a busy news week this week. What does this mean? What does this mean for President Obama? And Jackie, we'll have you start things off with.
He's got a lot to clean up. You know, I totally disagree with the point that you're taking. Is it profiling? It's profiling. However,
I didn't take that point. I just asked the question.
other groups have.
I think it's a great point. I agree.
Other groups have been targeted. There's, conservative and conservative and progressive. There is no question about that. However, I think the system is broken. There's no rules as to how to pull out who's political and who's for social welfare. And we have to
But
address
the
that.
Obama
Very quickly, everybody's going to have one last sentence. Dee Dee?
The Obama administration's already admitted this was wrong, and it's a very, very bad week for Obama, probably his worst.
Okay, Scott?
The charge is certainly profiling. It looks like that may be what happened. Obama said that shouldn't have happened, and that's right. New rules should come out of this.
All right, we thank you very much. Don't go away, everyone, and don't you go away. When we come back, we're going to be talking about another group that is the target of federal officials that could have some more political backfire for the president.